Sometimes life gives us lemons. Sometimes it gives us lemonade. Other times it gives us something entirely out of left field that makes us say, WTF. But no matter what obstacles come, there is most often a way out on the other side, and we are once again victorious. My name is Dr. Rowe, and you are listening to my podcast about resilience. Every guest shares a tragedy to triumph story to give listeners like you the inspiration to push through every single day. Listen now as my next guest shares how they were life-jacked.
What do you do when tragedy stops you in your tracks and now you have to pivot? My name is Dr. Rowe, and this is LifeJacked, the Resilience Podcast. LifeJacked is when an unfortunate or unplanned event happens to jack with your life. My guest for this week, Rhonda Parker Taylor, a writer, entrepreneur, and academic researcher, has a surefire formula for building resilience. After losing her adopted son tragically by a violent act at work, she aligned her experiences and insights to create life balance techniques. She has created slogans that are meant to make every day great despite what is thrown at you. She has a passion for helping others discover their true potential. In addition to her work in resilience, she is a novelist. Her debut book, Crossroads, which was released in February of 2023, is a suspense novel that follows a main character, Paris Pennington, who has a difficult situation to navigate. I am happy to welcome Rhonda to this show so she can inspire all of you to foster a sense of purpose and meaning. Hi, Rhonda. Welcome. Thank you so much for being a guest on my show. How are you?
Oh, I thank you for the wonderful introduction. I'm doing wonderful this evening, and I'm really looking forward to helping people rediscover their sense of identity. It doesn't matter if we're stuck in a rut, have feelings of languish, or needing some inspiration, or even gone through your own personal crisis. As we're stuck, sometimes it just participating in a good conversation will help us navigate and embrace change and rediscover ourselves. I'm eager to share my personal experiences and insights, and I hope that we can navigate with grace and authenticity to ensure that every one of your audience members out there can enjoy and learn no matter where they are in their life.
Oh, I love it. For the listeners out there, could you please share with them a little bit about you and what led you to become an entrepreneur and found Intelligent Solutions?
So I would say I was born to be an entrepreneur because I come from an entrepreneurial background, but I think I bucked it. I didn't go for my purpose at first. I started out thinking that, I was going to go into the fashion world and follow the dreams through either Dallas or New York or Chicago, the big city. And then I had to realize that life sometimes is difficult for us. And as we change careers and we generate our energy, we find that we have to reassess ourselves. So I started doing this process every 3 to 5 years, and I do it with my students and clients now. And that's a life balance book that helps me stay focused, stay disciplined, and practice positivity, because like all of us, life always hits. And that's when I've always had to do change, whether it been the death of a loved one or, hey, even in elementary school and high school, we all, it doesn't matter what the age is out there, we all go through situations that, help us re-navigate because we have to pivot. Life transitions are hard. So as far as an entrepreneurial, I started out working for my father, 5 years old, in his steel manufacturing organization. And he was an entrepreneur. He started it from scratch in a barn. Now it's a mid-size manufacturing company. And I learned that spirit that if it's meant to be, it's up to me. I did go into the college realm and the academics, and I have a doctorate in business, but I never lost that entrepreneurial understanding that, the creativity part of your life, it has to be there, and being self-aware and setting up your own success was important, and the success of others.
Wow, that's amazing. And forgive me, do you like to be called Dr. Taylor or Dr. Rhonda Parker Taylor?
You can just call me Rhonda. I think that the title itself was the academic exploration for me was to prove that I could do it. All of you out there, I want to tell you, no matter what your dream is, if you want to do it, you can. Do you know that I flunked kindergarten? If it was not been for a good mentor that helped me throughout my younger years, I would never have been able to go to college. So it's finding those people and putting those people in place that really have your best interest and have that positivity that encourage you to do it. And in the last moments of my high school career, I had to pass a proficiency test. And in that proficiency test, I wasn't going to pass it. I had already failed it. And the teacher that had friended me, mentored me, however you want to say, said, I will tutor you over between your junior and your senior year, and we will get you through this. And I studied, and I got a job at Arby's. And when it came to pay for her services at the end, she said, just make sure you pass the test. So mentorship and taking care of yourself and taking care of those around you is all part of a plan that we all should be contributing to.
No, you're absolutely right. Now, earlier you mentioned about loss, that we, unfortunately are not going to escape feeling the pain of losing close to us. So you lost someone close to you. You lost your son tragically while he was at work. Would you mind sharing a few details from that day?
Oh, I wouldn't mind at all, because hopefully it'll help somebody out there. First of all, when you lose a loved one, it doesn't matter whether it's tragic from a, in this case, it was a violent act. It was a young man that I had embraced and adopted, and still to this day have a good relationship with his biological mother. She was in a place at the time where she could not care for him, and we made an agreement. So we were two women that decided that in the best interest of the child, that I would take over his guardianship and his life, basically, to care for him. But we still, and he still had a relationship with her too. And we got him through those difficult teenage years, and he started having children, and he was working a job as a bouncer in a bar in the evening times, and working in the day at Penn Station. And he knew, he's like, it's kind of getting rough in here, and I have kids. I probably should be thinking about moving on. And shortly after he'd made that comment, they had put a young man out of the bar. And when they opened the door at closing, he was outside with a gun and shot the whole security team. Many people out there in the world are going through these tragics. We see it in the news every day. When he passed, it was in 2009. But it redefined me in that first moment. If anybody's out there and they're going through one of those moments, it doesn't have to be tragic. Like I said, it could be the loss of a parent or, child to illness. And, I've experienced each loss has a different meaning and a different pathway to healing. But if you're out there, the first thing is acknowledge it. When the police came and told me, and his girlfriend came and knocked on the door and told me what was going on, all I can remember is as those words came out, that there was a crack in the wall from where the house had settled. I hadn't even noticed it before. And I followed that crack up. And I had to say to myself, it's going to be okay. And just that one moment of focusing and acknowledging that life was going to be different, that this was going to be one of the most painful things that I'd ever experienced, then I was able to move from that one moment of acknowledgement and stillness and say, okay, I'm aware of the situation. I have some self-awareness. And I have a purpose now. There's kids that have to be cared for. There are, there's a variety of things that need to be taken care of, and I need to go see him, before all of this starts. And so I kind of took on a kind of a youthful approach to that second moment, which is action. And I said, okay, we're going to be like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and dentist that wanted to thrive, and Frosty the Snowman, because the song is in all of those movies, and that is take one foot in front of the other, and soon you'll be walking across the floor. And I took that deep breath, and I realized, you know what? That mindfulness moment made me realize that self-care and preservation and resilience was going to be my friend for a while. And what I did in that moment is I started looking for the same people that were having the loss and the relationships and bonding with them to make sure we were going to be okay.
Now, I love that you said that each loss has a different meaning. And so do you feel that your adopted son's tragic loss had an impact on your journey towards resilience?
Oh, I'm sure. So one of the factors in my life is I have always been next to the person that's passed that I've known, whether it be my mother, my father, my aunt, uncle, grandmother, grandpa. I was always there. And in his case, obviously, I wasn't. And that was a big mental issue for me at first, because I was like, why wasn't I there? And I had even left him a message that evening because he had been avoiding my calls. You know how kids are at that age, and he called me back, and I told him, if I don't hear from you, I'm coming up to that bar, and I'm gonna give you a spanking right there in front of all your friends. And of course I was kidding, but it was the way I knew that he would laugh, and I knew he would pick up the phone and call. And it's definitely different when you lose a child because it's unnatural. You learn that you're going to lose your parents one day. You learn that your grandparents are going to be gone someday. And when it's a natural death, the acceptance of it, no matter how hard it is, because my mother had passed just a few years before that on the exact same day. On September 19th, she passed away in 2004. And then on September 19th, he passed away. Needless to say, I'm not a very big fan of September 19th. And then on September 19th in 2020, my father was getting ready to pass, and they were making us make the decision. And he was alert enough for us to tell him, you realize what day it is? And he said, no, let your mom have her own day and do it on the 20th. So you learn to not only find the stories that help you be resilient, but you also learn that resilience is a choice, because it would be very easy to crawl up in the bed and not get out for a while. So it's one of those things that you realize that in D'Angelo's case, I had to change my lifestyle. I was working with college students his age, and that was difficult, seeing them thrive. And what brought me joy in those moments, to see a 21, 22-year-old get it and have that light bulb moment, became pain. So I decided at that point that not only was I going to take care of myself and believe in myself and not give up, but I was going to redefine myself. and undertake a challenge of opening up my own consulting company that would help people that were a little older, typically the ones that were going out of college or redefining their life after maybe a period of time, whether it be, being in the home with children or been in a job for a long period of time. And I would help them redefine their lives and redefine their purpose.
Now, many of us, like you mentioned, of course, once we experience a tragedy, a loss, we want to crawl up in the bed and just stay there under the covers and just bury ourselves and maybe never come out. But of course, like you said, that's not something that we can do because we do have to move on with our lives. So what strategies did you use to navigate through such a challenging time? And, through those strategies, maybe that can help other parents who are coping with the loss of a child, or as you said, just the loss of anyone close to them.
The first thing that I did, and I am a spiritual person, but I'm also, not bound by any one religious thought. I was raised Christian, and that's what I practice. But the first thing I did is every time I was feeling that moment, and let's say I was driving, I would just pull into whatever community that was open. And I surrounded myself with people that it did not matter what denomination. I surrounded myself with people that really wanted to see me accomplish and find harmony in my life again. Their prayers and laying hands or meditation. I mean, it could have been a variety of things because it might not have been just a straight religious, spiritual journey at the time. It might have been a yoga class. It might have been someplace where I could use the positive language of mental, spiritual, emotional healing. So that could even be, for those out there, it could be putting music on that brings rejuvenation, or, like I said, meditation. It could be getting a massage. It was putting in things that allowed me to face my fears. I even went and visited, for instance, my mother's grave site at times and talked to her about the loss. Talking, and I'm not talking about gossiping talking, but talking to anyone, a counselor, a mentor, a spouse, a friend that has your best intentions. They call cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, the talk therapy for a reason. Sometimes you just have to get it out. And, I found that I did that with a variety of different people, and I had to be persistent. I had to say, okay, what is it that I'm going to learn from this? And then I had to set a plan for it.
I love that. Could you elaborate on the importance of self-care and well-being practices while you're trying to build resilience?
That is one thing. I call it exploring the dimensions of your life. If you want to explore the dimensions of your life and self-care, you need to do it in all areas. And so I personally think there's at least 13 areas. Your physical wellness, whether it be walking, stretching, all of those things that, we hear about all the time. Those are the ones we hear about. And sometimes we don't want to hear about them, but, making sure you're getting vitamin D. So if I ever hear someone that has lost a loved one and in that throes, I'm like, okay, it's a sunny day outside. I want you to take 5 minutes away from all the planning, all the people that are calling, all the responding, and step outside and let the sun nurture you. So physical well-being and getting those vitamins and taking care so that your body through the stress doesn't break down is very important. I think there's an intellectual dimension too. Read about how to cultivate your resilience and what works for you and what's worked for others. Maybe there's a very good book called The Worst Life Has to Give You, and it's a young woman from Canada that lost 2 of her children within 6 months. And, there are many people that have gone through these experiences, and by talking to them, you can get an intellectual understanding of what you're going through. Like I said, there is nothing natural about losing a child. They're supposed to outlive you. And I have talked to one podcaster at one time, and he calls people, and he'd lost a son to cancer, and he said that he calls parents that have lost children peregrines, which is a falcon, form of falcon. And one of the reasons is because we're supposed to protect. And if you find that you've lost one that's lost a child, they will even mourn their child. And so finding an intellectual way of handling it is important. Then finding the emotional way of handling, because sometimes you're going to be a mess. I mean, there's just no way around it. You're just going to be, you're going to be standing there fine one moment. And I can remember being at a holiday and everybody was happy and everybody's kids were running around, and I had to leave for my emotional well-being. And it wasn't anything anybody did wrong. I had to set the boundaries to nurture my capacity to manage my own feelings, so I didn't crawl back in the bed. Then you have your spiritual, you have your romantic partners, you have your parenthood that you should nurture. You have your social connections, because we isolate when we're an injured human being most of the time. So, building and maintaining rich relationships that are within your community, which is what I was doing when I would go to the church. And then for me, I had to redefine my personal pursuits and aspirations. And I had started thinking about writing Crossroads, but I went ahead and dove into it and realized that this was something that I needed to do for myself, and it gave me a purpose. And then, redoing your home and nurturing your home, because anytime we're in tragedy, things just start falling apart. just face it, it just falls apart. The dishes are in the dishwasher. You haven't opened your blinds in a week, and then you're like, okay, there's sun out there. Let's open up. Let's start having some long-term clarifying goals to inspire us. So I think that when we do these things, what we find, and I hope your listeners out there can relate to, is we can learn from each other on how to thrive and have a positive mindset that gets us away from falling into the trap that challenges and setbacks have to defeat us.
Now, you fostered a sense of purpose and meaning in your daily life. So what can others do to foster their own sense of purpose and meaning in their daily life, especially when they're trying to build this skill set of resilience?
The first thing, I would say, get to know yourself. Many of us are humans doing, not human beings. And what I mean by that is we're doing things. We have a checklist. Like in Crossroads, you'll notice that my main character, Paris Pennington, is, she's a workaholic, and she's got her little checklist, and we kind of work like that. That's how, especially if you're from the Midwest, that's the way you're raised, is you got your checklist, you got your goals, and you check them off, and you go to the next thing. Even your house cleaning, everything's a checklist, and so we're humans doing, not humans being. And a human being is one that takes the time to find the purpose, find the goal, sets the goals and makes a game plan, but is persistent about living life to its fullest. So how I would suggest someone that may be in that rut would be to first sit down and say, what is it that I really enjoy? Go through all 13 of those dimensions that I said and say, okay, physically, what do maybe you don't like to work out, but maybe you don't mind stretching, or maybe you don't mind going to a park or a zoo and looking at the animals and that giving you exercise. What is it physically that you like to do? Maybe you like to cook. So maybe, taking on some responsibilities of cooking. in your home that cultivates a more nutritious way of taking care of yourself. Go through and look at everything and say, okay, these are the things I really enjoy. Like I love puzzles, but it's not the first thing that I pick up. It's something I have to consciously make myself do, and I have so much fun doing it. But typically, as a human doing versus being, I'll flip the TV on, and 3 hours might be gone, right? So find those things you like and set them in your calendar so that you realize that you're not just a human doing. You're not sitting there and the TV's watching you as you watch the world pass by. If you enjoy cooking, you're cooking. If you enjoy critters, you're enjoying the critters. And go through every one of those. How are you going to develop your personal life in all those ways? And then sit down, or how you think you like it to do it, and then sit down and document what you're really doing. And you'll find that rut is after the pandemic. Oh my goodness! I was ordering DoorDash. I was watching 5 hours of TV at night and you realize that you somewhat are out of balance, and that even if you're trying to build resilience, there's no resiliency there because you're a human doing during your work lifetime, and at nighttime you shut down and you're a human resting out instead of thriving in those. And rest out is as bad as burnout.
Wow. I love that. Remember that we are human beings and not always human doings, even though, yes, we're always doing things. But you're right. Sometimes we just need to be. Now, you mentioned earlier that you're spiritual and you have chosen to have a walk with God. And so for those of us who are spiritual like yourself, at times when we find ourselves life-jacked because of injury, illness, or any other tragedy, it makes us angry. We get frustrated. We are actually angry with God, right? Because he's supposed to be the all-knowing. He's the omnipotent, right? But we feel like, how could this happen to me? Like, I pray to him, I tithe, I do right, I do good deeds, I do community service, and then sometimes things just still happen to us. So how can we still remain closer to God even in these times when we have been life-jacked?
Well, first of all, you've kind of got a multiple thing there, because we're questioning. And sometimes that daily walk is just as hard as any other relationship. So sometimes all I can get out of my mouth when I'm meditating or thinking is, thank you, God, for a terrible day. And it may even have an explicit in it. And if that's all you can get out, it's okay. You still have a relationship. Relationships, doesn't matter if it's with God or your spouse, it requires us to nurture. And it doesn't cost money. Many people are like, I got to go buy a book, or I have to go take this person out to dinner, but, or whatever, to be able to build. Takes in Bible, Quran, whatever a person believes, sit down, listen, read, and talk. Think out loud, think in quietness, and get that direction. And, when we're questioning during those times, yes, you're right, we're angry, we have fury a lot of times. And in Proverbs, it says, anger is cruel, fury is overwhelming, but who can stand before jealousy? Envy makes the bones rot. And when we realize that our bodies take all of that in and connect, and it's like little stab wounds around us when we embrace it. Think about just what that says. Anger is cruel. We get angry and then we take it out on God. I can remember when I was going through a crisis and someone said, if you don't like your definition of God, find something to redefine it. And, being raised in that Christian environment, you think of the male figure and the patriarch. And I was in a park in Indianapolis, and there was this old beat-up tree in the middle of the water. And I said, that's my God, because that's how I felt. As soon as I did that, and I owned my own feelings and how I felt about that relationship and what was going on in my life, I realized that bad things happen to good people too. And I had to take that anger and that cruelty that I was doing to myself and to my relationship and my ability to thrive and have a sense of purpose in my spiritual connection and create an intimacy back. And believe it or not, next time I went into it's called the Eagle Creek here. It's a big reservoir water. That tree had blossomed, even though it was in my eyes dead at the time and had all the leaves in the world on it. And I had to kind of laugh and to say, okay, I tried to show you and you showed me. And it doesn't matter how bad we look at the moment that we're going through that crisis, God has the ability to help us bloom. And I've gone through many trials, and I know all of us have. All of you out there on the podcast that's listening, I know you're going through it probably right now. It doesn't matter whether it's a challenge at work or one of my job things is I have to do statistics a lot, and I just hate statistics. It doesn't matter if you're losing a loved one, a spouse, maybe you're going through a divorce. All of these challenges are real. We can bloom after them. And it's all about making sure we have a process in place and that we're prepared and that we take an active participation and being a human being that brings positivity and a mindset works for us. I can't tell anybody how to be. All I can tell is how I work through it. I've lost a father, I've lost a mother, I've lost a son, all of them in the same month, different years. I've we've all been in a car accident at some point. We've all had loved ones, and the world's getting harder and harder daily. So as we overcome these challenges, if we can make it a positive impact on ourselves and others, we can experience a sense of purpose and direction. But it all comes from cultivating meaningful relationships with self, your God as you know it, and others. We're not meant to be alone.
So true. And you said that building a strong social support network is crucial for resilience. How so?
Well, first, when you're crying, somebody should be there. When you're aching, someone should bring you soup. It doesn't mean they can solve it. They're not there. They're not professionals. See, that's where we really get things messed up. A support system doesn't mean they solve it. It's not, here, let me give you my problem and drain you of every positive feeling that you have. Because we can drain when we're going through a problem. We don't want to drain those that are supporting us. What we want to do is just know we have someone in our daily lives. So they can be church members, they can be family members, they can be your spouse. And when did you or me or any of us put the same amount of love and the attention into those that are our support system? I would call my sister one of my best support systems, my husband obviously too. And I've practiced, and it's become a daily looking forward to, but at the beginning, as life got busy, in the mid of our lives, we may not have talked as much. And I finally said, I'm going to call her daily. It doesn't have to be a long conversation, just daily. I'm going to call her and we're going to exchange our lives with each other. And we become what we say is, I love doing life with you. It's not about draining. Nobody has to come bring gifts. Nobody has to come clean your house because you're feeling sad. Those are not the things that, they might do it once if you're going through a hard time, but that is not what support is. Support is not them taking over your life and doing it for you. Support is embracing that the fact that you're trying to build resilience back in there and being adaptable to face the adversity. They help you realize that pain comes with joy. Even if it's a stupid, corny joke, it doesn't matter. It's contributing to the personal and collective growth of the individual and of themselves, so that after they've embraced that they're your support system, they have a sense of inner peace and well-being just like you do. You have a responsibility to care for the giver as well as being the taker.
Now, I know you practice mindfulness techniques that really have been particularly effective for you. So could you walk the listeners and me through a few of those techniques?
Oh, gladly. So one is the typical breathing technique where you slowly inhale and exhale and you try to relax the portions of your body. And if you have an Apple Watch, for instance, they even have it on your watch where you can do that together. And I would say that that's good even if you're not going through a particular moment. Do it a couple of times a day. For one, it's good for your oxygen levels in your body, and it gets you relaxed and gets the tension out of your body. So that is very effective. I'm a huge walker, and during that period of time, I typically will use music that's soothing and relaxing. And then one mindfulness technique that I do is being outdoors. And I live on 3 acres, and so I get all kinds of critters and different kinds of wildlife that comes through. And, I will put a mat out there and just like a child, like we did when we were kids, and not worry about the bugs and not worry about and just be in nature. When we can grasp from nature the ability to thrive becomes ability to believe in self. So nature has a healing power. Same thing coloring. People laugh, but, coloring, each color has a different feel. And so sometimes when you're really going through it, if you just get one of your children's or your grandkids' coloring books and put a sense, maybe a blue or a green, or, if you need some happiness, a yellow, and you color, that is a technique that a lot of people in therapy use, because not only does it help you regulate mood, but it also helps you focus for just those few minutes. And then, whatever that moment was can kind of surpass.
Love it. So now, in your opinion, what are the best ways to build resilience?
Start before life hits. If you have a daily practice of taking care of yourself, then when life does hit, you're ready for it. You don't want life to hit and you're already on empty. You're going to have an emotional breakdown because you're not able to elevate yourself to rise to the occasion, to handle it. So when you are burning yourself all the way to the end, it's like a game of Uncle. You remember that game when you were a kid and you hurt each other's hands by twisting them until someone said Uncle? You're already doing that with life. And so then when you turn around and you get hit by life, because it's going to hit one day. It doesn't matter if it's a financial issue, your bank account got hacked, your grandson wrecked the car, whatever could happen, an illness, bad news from your own doctor. It's going to hit one day. That's a guarantee. You can't isolate yourself to a point that that it's not going to happen one day. So the number one step to surviving is preparing your body and self before it even hits. And be persistent about those boundaries.
Well, Rhonda, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you. Can you take the time to let everyone know how they can get a copy of your book, Crossroads, or contact you at Intelligent Solutions for writing services?
So, Crossroads, it's a suspense novel based out of Indianapolis, and it can be found on Amazon. It can be found in Barnes & Noble's website, Goodreads, all the major platforms. There are copies of Crossroads if you're in the Indiana area, then in all the Barnes & Nobles. The ones outside of the Indiana, Illinois area, it might be that you'll have to have them order it. It just depends on whether they picked it up or not. As far as reaching me personally, I'm on all the major social media platforms, and I do have a website. The website's Rhonda with an H, R-H-O-N-D-A, Parker, P-A-R-K-E-R, Taylor, T-A-Y-L-O-R, no dots, no spaces, nothing, just .com. And you can shoot me an email, or you can go on my social medias, which are all under Rhonda Parker Taylor also.
Any last words of encouragement for the listeners?
My word of encouragement for those who've had their life jacked, I would say make every day great. Even when life's jacked, you can still put a smile on your face. It does not mean that you have to downtrod yourself. It means that you're going through something. You have to learn to be flexible and adaptable and surround those people around you that will help you thrive even through the challenge. Be patient with the process. It does take time.
Well, Rhonda, I wish you and your family nothing but blessings and abundance. Please take care.
You too. You have a wonderful evening. Bye, everybody.
Hey, are you really loving this podcast, or did you really enjoy this week's episode? Then please subscribe, like, rate, and leave a review. It's very much appreciated. And remember to live, laugh, love, learn, and then repeat. See you in the next episode.